Okay, welcome everyone. Happy New Year and good to see you all. Hopefully everyone had, or at least got some of what they needed over the holiday break and stayed healthy and and we're all hopefully ready to dive into the new year. So this is the first Community Engagement Committee meeting of 2023, pretty exciting. And I will call us to order at 6:11. And thanks again for your patience with our tech issues. Liz Sayre is here, so hopefully you're on board to do minutes for us, which is great. And we may be joined by a couple of other folks who expressed interest and who may need a minute to figure out where we are. But in the meantime, I just wanted to, we usually start out with public comment on all of our board meetings, but we're a really small group. So if it's okay with folks, we'll just, weave that in throughout the meeting. But I would like to just take a minute to do some quick introductions because there are a couple of new folks here. So I'm Krista Siringo. I'm the vice chair of the MAUSD board and the chair of the Community Engagement Committee. And this committee meets the first Tuesday of the month usually. And our charge is to make sure that we are regularly informing our community about what's happening in our school district and also getting input from our community as we're thinking about the future and about decisions that we might be making. So that's a little bit about what we're here to do. So I'll just call on folks as I see them to introduce themselves. Erin, you're in my upper left, so can you go ahead?
Yeah, I'm Erin Jipner. I'm a member of the MAUSD board, a rep from Bristol.
Thank you. And Nancy?
I'm Nancy Cornell, and I live in Starksboro, and I'm the mother of people who went to the schools in this district, and the grandmother of people who are in this district right now. And I'm also the former associate superintendent of schools in this district.
Thanks, Nancy. One thing I didn't say was that this board committee is a little bit unique in that we have both board members and community members. So Nancy has been on this committee, I think it's since its inception.
Just about, yeah.
Just about. Okay, Kim?
Yeah, I'm Kim Callahan. I live in New Haven and have two girls that went through the MAUSD district and are off in the world, hopefully doing good things. And I've been on the Community Engagement Committee, I think, since the beginning. I think it was 3 years ago that we met at the central office for our first meeting.
Great. And for those just joining, we're just going around and doing some quick introductions. Let's see, Elisa. And you pronounce it Elisa and not Alyssa, is that right?
It's Elisa, yeah.
Elisa, okay.
Hi, everyone. I am a community member. This is my second time to attend one of these meetings. I was a graduate from Mount Abe, as were all three of my daughters and two of my grandchildren, and great grandchildren on their way there. And I hope we can make a change.
Thank you. And Deborah?
Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Merriman. I'm a resident of Bristol. I'm a retired teacher, and I have grandchildren in the district, and I'm just interested to see what you're doing. So I'm hoping, like Elisa, that we can make some changes.
Well, welcome. Thanks for being here. And Liz?
I'm Liz Sayre. I'm from Bristol Board Rep.
Oh, can't hear you so well, Liz. Sorry.
Is
There you
that
go.
better?
Yep.
I'm Liz Sayre. I'm a Bristol Board Rep. like, I mean, it's interesting. So my grandfather and my mother and my uncles and my son, all of us, we've all gone to school in this district. So I've got a really long range of the history, and that's, I think, really good. And so for me, part of it is not so much changes as it is holding on to things that we hold dear about our communities, and keeping those things strong.
Great, thanks, Liz. And Christopher?
Hi, everyone. I was hoping to just listen along. So we got the kids running around. They're actually off me at the moment, luckily. So I've got 2 kids that are in Bristol Elementary School. I don't know how many of these have officially made it to, but through the community engagement process of the last couple of years, I've attended a fair bit of that.
Great, thank you.
Everyone else is hiding off camera.
All right, and Ainika.
Hello, my name is Anna Luna, Bristol resident, have one child in high school at Monet, and I am one of the few persons of color in town that really been affected by that.
Thanks, Ainika. I'm so glad you could be here zooming in from far away right now. I know you're not in town, so it's great that you could be here. Okay, so before we get underway, we just need to do a quick procedural thing, which is to approve the minutes of our last meeting. So for Erin and Liz, can one of you just make a motion, please, to approve those minutes?
Liz moves and
Okay,
second.
and do either of you have anything to add to them or change or edit? Nope. Okay, so we'll call them approved. Okay, so what this committee really is designed to do is to ensure that the board is regularly connecting with our community as we think about the direction we're headed in as a district. And so we have lots of folks who provide input into the decisions that we make about the curriculum and the programming and the services that we offer. And all of that falls under this really big ends policy, which is kind of like our goals. What do we want our students to achieve when they graduate? And it's the board's responsibility to find a way to check in with our community about those goals and that direction with some regularity, to make sure that in addition to hearing from teachers and administrators, that we're also hearing from people in the community about how things are going, answering questions or providing information that might come up, and also finding ways for community members to have a voice in decision making. A few years ago, we embarked on community engagement with the focus around looking at our facilities, looking at declining enrollment, thinking about what we might do to address that issue. And along the way, I think we learned some really great skills, and a lot of, I know Kim and Liz and Nancy were a big part of that work. And we work specifically with Sue McCormick and the Creative Discourse Group, who they do equity and inclusion consulting all around the state. And we had a pretty robust community engagement process. And one of the things that came out of that was linked to our agenda, which is the development or the identification of 8 core educational values. And one of those values is equity. And so the board, now that we're in this sort of, I think you said, Nancy, kind of a transition place where we've gone through a lot of challenging conversations about the future of our district in light of declining enrollment. We are now a district of 4 elementary schools instead of 5. It's a good time to kind of reset as a board and to think about what we want to focus on and what we might engage the community around. And the topic of equity is one that is a through line through so much of what the district does and has done. And it's obviously something that has even heightened awareness, especially since the pandemic and the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, and just lots of awareness around equity or inequity, particularly racial inequity. So we've decided as a board to think about how we can ensure that we're applying an equity lens to our decision making. And that's very aspirational, and we have a long way to go. And there are pockets of this work that are already being done and being done well in different schools and in different classrooms and by different people. But there's a lot more to do. And within our ends policy, which, as I said before, is kind of our stated goals and commitment to our community in exchange for your tax dollars, we have a commitment to educate our children and ensure that the outcomes are not determined by any pre-existing characteristics, conditions, identity, environmental issues, initial proficiencies. So we have this stated commitment, but we want to explore what that means. And it's important for our community to have a voice in that conversation. And so it's a big topic, and I think it's an important one. Before we dive in to thinking about how we could engage in this conversation with the community, I wanted to spend a few minutes doing our own thinking about why this is important. So for me, as the parent of a student with a disability and a non-binary child, I've seen firsthand the cost of not having a process in place that's overarching throughout our district, a way to evaluate decisions before they're made to ensure that we're striving for equity for all students. And so I thought it would be helpful for all of us to just take a little bit of time to ground ourselves in the importance of this work. And I'd like to invite you to consider 2 questions, and we'll take some time to just reflect on each of them one at a time. Before I do, I just want to check my email again to make sure we don't have anyone still wondering where we are. Nope. Okay. And also I'm going to just pause. Jennifer, I'm going to put you on the spot. I see you've just joined us. Welcome. I'm Krista, and I'm chairing this conversation today. But if you don't mind just quickly introducing yourself to the group, that would be great.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer Forrest. I'm a former Mount Abe student many, many moons ago. Elisa is my mom. She invited me to come and be part of the conversation, and I'm just here to learn and listen and be support.
Great. Okay. I'm glad you're here. All right. So I don't have any particular way that we'll go through this, but I'm just going to throw out a question, and I'd just love to hear people's feedback in whatever way you want to share. So the first question is, what is the cost of not applying an equity lens to the decisions we make as a school system? And anyone that feels like they want to share can just go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm happy to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
So probably more at the high school than elementary level, but one of the areas that I work in technology. So one of the areas we see a big push overall is Girls Who Code and groups like that, and just generally getting young girls involved in STEM earlier on. I think it's a lot better than even when I was a kid now, but that is something that we would risk losing if we don't consider kind of those gender norms of what paths people should go down through their education. It starts pretty early.
I will go. I have been a teacher in a different, oh my dear, it is, okay. I have been a teacher in a different district, so I have an inside view what is being in the classroom with the students from first grade to 8th grade. And then I come home and I know what is the life with the students in high school. And the first thing that I see is, even in this meeting, is we are in a world totally different than the one that we were raised. Internet and media, and I'm happy that Christopher brings that over. Our children are constantly listening to the media, and they are way more informed than many of us because they get a lot of information. And we parents are not prepared to have those conversations. Conversations about gender, we are 10 years behind them. Like last year, I asked my 5th graders how, like we were talking about LGBTQ flag and LGBTQ issues, 10 of them raised their hand saying that they were queer. They were identifying in the different ways, lesbians, non-binary, and this conversation, even the language, some people, some parents even know how to handle this language. The kids are going beyond that. I am very involved with this language because I am a teacher, I am a curious, I am mother, and also I have been working with equity and inclusion in my district because of my personal experience, but also for all the above reasons. So I think that yes, it is so important because we cannot continue educating our children with the same minds of the education in this country was founded. I didn't go to a school to this education. And one of the things that terrifies me is to see how this country or United States, no America, because that language needs to stop. There is America is a continent, North America, Central America, and South America, but continue that centering the white. Like as a teacher, I never saw books or curriculum that were talking about the magnificence of the African empires before the Europeans, the Mayans, the Incas, the Aztecs, the traditional cultures, the Native Americans. Just now, after the people, as you saw, after George Floyd, after Black Lives Matter, after all the Native Americans that raise their voice, people start to see them. But still, we have white people that call the N-word to others. We have still white people that think that they are superior than others. And I'm sorry, I am a person of color, and I really, if we are going to talk about equity, the first thing is that we need to go down to the reality. Because sometimes the people check the balls like, oh yeah, we bring equity, and then we are going to do some meetings, and we are going to talk about LGBTQs. This is so deep in this country. Like when I was talking about segregation, people still are segregated. A school is segregated when we are white, when we have to teach white ethnic curriculums, when we have to teach things talking about the Eurocentric values. This is racist. The education that our children are getting are racist. The teachers are not ready to talk about gender issues because they are still with the cross. And I'm sorry for the Catholic people or Christian people or religious people, but religion also has a big issue there. Like still people talking about Christmas in the classrooms. So it is so big and so deep that I do believe that we need to go, and that's what I feel that is so important and so deep that we need to go way, way, way till the bottom to start working in this in this transformation, because equity is not just a little bit of showing the flag, pride flag and the Black Lives Matter. Goes really, really down. So that's why we're talking about the structural racism. And it's not because I am a person of color, it's because the culture of this country has been divided by one group that believes that is superior than others, and this superiority continues showing up in every single way in our curriculums, in our society, in the hiring. How many people of color? My child tells me, tells me, Mommy, there are not 1%. There is only 1% of color in our school, in our teachers. What are we telling our children? So it has to be in the hiring committees. It has to be a very deep in so many different ways. I'm done.
Thank you, Ainika. I appreciate your voice. Anne, hi, good to see you. Anne just joined us.
late.
That's okay. We are, before we start thinking about this plan to begin a conversation around equity in our community, I asked folks to consider several questions. And the first one we're talking about right now is, what is the cost of not applying an equity lens to the decisions we make as a school system? So that's sort of where we're at right now.
I'd like to add that the cost is that we perpetuate everything that Ainika was just talking about if we don't apply an equity lens, and we do not change the systemic racism that exists. If we don't look at things through a different lens, if we continue to look at things the way we always have, we continue to perpetuate a lot of the just a lot of the inequity that occurs in any school, and whether it's racial, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's physical, there's so many layers and aspects to it that if we don't, as a community, learn to share with our kids and teach our kids in a way that puts them in the world with their own lenses of equity, then we're doing a disservice to them, we're doing a disservice to our community, and we're doing a disservice to whatever it is they go on to be and become. So I see that as an overarching huge cost of not having an equity lens in all decisions.
I'd just like to say that I totally agree with everything that Annika and Kim have already said. And so on top of that, I would like to add the piece that kids need to feel safe in all of these areas, or equity is not going to happen. And I hope that concrete steps are taken so that kids feel safe, whether they're in the high school, which is really where my focus was, but also the elementary school. Kids just need to feel safe in order to feel like they have equal opportunity. I guess that's all I want to say. Thank you.
I think I just want to answer the question with a question. And I want to thank everybody that spoke already too. And I definitely agree. But my question to the question is, what do we mean by equity? How are we defining equity? Because I know that I myself and other people that I know around me have used the term equity to get out of talking about anti-racism. And so for me, if by equity we're talking about a huge focus on anti-racism, to me, in some aspect, there's many ways in which anti-racism falls under the umbrella of equity, but it is so systemic throughout every system that we exist in. And it's so hidden so deeply in those systems that I'm afraid that if we just focus on equity, we'll bypass everything that Kim and Ainika were talking about. So in a way, I think there's almost a cost of, using the word equity instead of the cost of not having the equity that we have to just watch out for. I'd hate to see us so focused on equity that we forget to teach our students how to become an anti-racist. That to me is the most important piece of all equity. So, thank you.
Just to throw in a little hurrah to the last two comments as well. What I'm interested in helping do as much as I possibly can do as a geezer white lady is to look at insofar as anybody would want this, is to be with the kids, to meet with the kids, to talk with the kids, oops, to support the kids who don't feel safe, and to somehow in a very direct way. It's sort of a little bit of a grassroots up. I feel like I've read a lot and been blown away a lot and heard lots of discussions about diversity and equity, and it is huge and systemic. And we are all going to be learning, certainly for the rest of my life and probably for the rest of all these kids' lives, of how to untangle a bunch of that. But right now, what captures me is if there are kids in this community who do not feel safe at school, how can we directly have an impact on that? And I am not in any way saying, oh, every kid is going to want to meet with an old white lady and talk about what it is that makes them not feel safe, and then have meetings with their peers and try to mediate some ways to to help out with that situation. But that's sort of where I get attracted. It's like from the bottom up, let's ask, and again, it's asking a lot of kids of color to do that. It's not their job, but I don't know how else to go about it and get at it from a less theoretical, less policy. I mean, policies are really important. I totally think that work has to go on. That's not where I get more interested in it. And so I'll stop there.
Go ahead, Liz, and then Jennifer.
I appreciate everything that's been said, and I think
I think we still need to volume up a little. Sorry, Liz.
I appreciate everything that's been said, and Anne, you just made me think of for a while now I've been a mentor at Bristol Elementary School, and I know that it just, what you just said really reminded me of that. That's when you really get in and you make a difference for a student. So because oftentimes all of this does seem really far removed, right? But getting involved in a program at the school, you get that, whether it's mentoring or an after school program for kids to do, whatever it may be. I think that really is one of the most powerful ways that we can support students.
Everybody, thank you for the comments, and I really appreciate everything that people are sharing. And yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I might add too, because sometimes when we talk about anti-racism work and we talk about systemic racism, we forget the ways in which white people have been dehumanized. And I mean that in the sense that we have been removed from our ability to really feel. And so we look towards people of color to show us what should we be feeling about racism. And I think in the anti-racist curriculum that needs to be happening, in the support and through the mentors, which, obviously we can't just have white mentors. We need mentors of color. We need to be doing better with bringing staff and other people into the schools. But that is part of it too. The way that history has been not true and that we have learned this sort of faulty foundation. I mean, as white people, I think there has to be a focus there also on rebuilding our humanity. So for me, it's important to not just be intellectualized about things, but that we come from an emotional place, that we come from the heart space, that it's not enough to just be saying words like equity, and those, those terms can be very loaded. So it's wonderful for me to hear people speak from the heart here, and that is hopeful, because I think that the just staying in our heads about things and doing a lot of, surveys or, this or that is not going to be the solution. That it's got to come from really understanding the ways in which systemic racism has affected us all. And so I guess that's what I want to bring to the conversation also. Pass.
Go ahead, just jump right in, Nancy.
I think the cost of not applying the equity lens to our decisions is that our democracy fails. In the end, that's really, equity is a key to democracy, and democracy cannot thrive without equity. And when I think about and talk about equity, I'm thinking not only about anti-racism, but also anti-classism, because I think that some of the same dynamics really apply to different socioeconomic classes in our communities and in the country, for sure. I also, I'm thinking about what Anne said about that she wants to work on the person-to-person level and is less interested in working on the policy level. I think the conversation and the work we might do around equity is very, very important. And at the same time, today I did something that I should have done before our last meeting, which is that I read the monitoring report that Aaron Jipner wrote and that the board adopted, that is related to how this organization, this community engagement committee and of the board, how that committee relates to the people in the communities it is serving. And it's actually a report that's linked in our agenda and very much worth reading. And it's in part about how the board should operate in relationship to our communities. And so while I am excited about and challenged by the prospect of our working on equity issues as a group with our communities, I think that report points to some structural things that need the attention of our committee in order to do that work and lots of other work. And so I'm torn between wanting to engage in the conversation we're starting to have here, but also worrying about how the structural work that that monitoring report calls for, how that structural work can get done unless this committee works on it for the board. And I also think that it's tempting in some ways to jump into the equity conversation because it's so tangible. And I'm just wondering if it's going to be possible for us to do both.
I'm going to jump in there because that's a great observation and tension, and I think that I struggle with this a lot. So you know, as a school board member and as a committee of the school board, we are at the sort of policy level, but those policies do inform on the ground work. And so one of my interests in joining the board stemmed from seeing inaccessible spaces in our district. And I've learned in the past 7 or 8 or 9 years that I can advocate for my daughter in terms of making a particular space more accessible for her, but it's a lot harder to advocate for a process that evaluates all renovations and construction and spaces with a lens toward, you know, universal access. And that's where we get to the policies. And right now, our policies don't have really robust language in them that we should be accountable for to ensure the equity that I think we're all seeking for all of our kids. And so for some folks, thinking about the policy level is dissatisfying. And I think in social change in general, people come to it in a lot of different ways and places that resonate most with who they are and what sort of ways they like to try to tackle problems. And at the board level, it is sort of 10,000 feet. But I do believe that until we have these overarching procedures, policies, ways to evaluate what we do, we're going to continue to be kind of trying to fix things on small levels without a commitment throughout the district that that is informed by partly by the lived experience of our community. And so I think that's where this committee comes into play, is that, you know, our job is to go out to the community to make sure that where we're trying to go resonates with the lived experience of our community, which we can't replicate as a 13-member board. That's a very, very, very micro representation of our whole community. So I think that's how I see this work. And I hope that we can, so I've got a plan for how we can do it that I'm pretty excited about, or a plan for how we can start. But it is fairly action oriented so that we have a way to kind of create a decision-making process, kind of a speed bump that we put all decisions through that is informed by whether they are truly equitable and what equitable means to the people in our community. Erin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna piggyback on both those things. Writing that ownership linkage monitoring report was part of the reason why I joined here. That and the vacancies that represented.
And my big push. Wink, wink.
Your big push, yeah. But I think it's super important that that was identified as an issue, that we don't have that in place. To me was kind of eye-opening, and I think to a lot of people on the board as well, that was a to me that's a really big piece of, it's essentially what this committee is, right? And we just haven't written it down. Krista, I like your ideas about having stuff in place and sort of breaking down what's important, equity being one of those things that's important, before we can write it down. So Nancy, I think we are on our way to making that plan. I signed up to rewrite that monitoring report this go round. And I'm hoping that there's more to it this time, that we have at least the outline in place for what that could look like. But it is important to this work, defining equity, however that's defined, or going even deeper to the anti-racism or racism aspects. I don't think any of these words that we're using to describe all the same thing, you know, the justice of it all or whatever, were ever meant to be loaded words as much as they were meant to give you a guardrail of how to keep you on track. And we give a lot of power to words for obvious reasons, but I liked what people were saying, that it's not the words themselves that you have to reuse. It's getting below those words into how they affect people. So I'm hoping that all of that gets put into that ownership linkage plan, and that we can use that plan here in the committee and at least check in on it every once in a while.
So I'm a little bit lost. So I guess I'm just trying to understand too, are we working on building a plan for the ownership linkage, for the linkage between the board and our communities? Or are we working on an equity project, for lack of a better word, that would become a part of that plan? Or are we doing both?
I think maybe it's both. I guess it's hard to get your head around like ownership linkage, and so as a board, we decided that the topic we were interested in was equity. But the plan, I guess, is sort of the mechanics of that, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's a good question. I think if you look back at what we did in 2018 and what we might do now, the mechanics are not that dissimilar. So maybe there's a way to develop a structure that the board can use regardless of the topic. But at the same time, I think for me personally, I'm really interested in specifying it right now around the conversation about equity, because it's timely and there's a lot of energy and resources, and it's been something I've been trying to do for a while, but I don't know if that, I'm not sure what to think about that.
So if that, let me just press it a little farther, if I
Yeah.
might, and then I'll be quiet. I'll try to be quiet.
Don't be quiet.
So if that's, I mean, I think we're all very interested in the topic of equity and the meaning of equity and the way to operationalize it, and the way to use equity, come to a common understanding and use it as a lens for our decisions. At the same time, the monitoring report that was adopted by the board around the linkage between the schools and the board and our communities points to some very specific things that need a structural attention. And so my question then is, how would we work on both? Because they're really sort of very different levels of projects. I guess my question is really, how would we work on both simultaneously? Because both of them are kind of pretty consuming. And I mean, maybe, I guess maybe what I would suggest, and I don't want to at all derail, I know you have some plans for tonight, and I don't want to derail them at all, but I guess one thing I would suggest is that if all of us have not yet read that gone to the link of that report, 4.8 ownership linkage, it would be good to read that So we all understand what that part of it is kind of about. Because for me, it was a revelation to read it, and I didn't read it until today.
Is there a way to put a link to that, Nancy, in the chat?
It's at the top of the agenda.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can put a link to it right in the chat as well. Let's put a pin in this because I think, and Erin, I'd love your insight on this as well. I mean, I guess one thing that comes to mind is that as we, there are some key points in, I'm sorry, I didn't drop it in the chat. And there is no chat option.
Yeah, I don't see a chat.
I don't see the chat. So one thing that when I scan that document, I see things like, we'll ensure we have diverse viewpoints. We'll, through various means of connection, we'll make sure that this is going back to the ends. So I feel like a lot of what we did, 2018, 2020, hit a lot of those things. And I think much of what we might do around this topic could hit a lot of those criteria, but I don't know, it might be worth kind of having, a grid or a, with the key components so that as we say, okay, our focus this year is going to be on equity, are we abiding by the charge set out in the ownership linkage policy about how we will do this, and are we going to go back and evaluate how well it went? That's one thing I can imagine that we could do kind of maybe at the same time or together.
Yeah, sorry if I interrupt anybody. When I wrote this, the community engagement committee is one piece of this, and this is sort of the work we do. But Nancy, what I think you're pointing at is the lack of the linkage plan, the 3-year linkage plan, right? That's a pretty structural thing. We need a plan in place on how we disperse information, how it's reviewed, that kind of thing, how we push that information out, right? So that people are aware of how their perspective is gathered, why it's gathered, and what it looks like when it's all put together. So I think those are all the things you're pointing at. And there is a lack of evidence for that. We had started to do some of that work through thought exchange forums and that kind of stuff, which I outline in there. But in order to establish the 3-year linkage plan, it really is its own, I think I would agree with Nancy, it really is its own work. But I don't think that work can happen unless we have conversations about what the ends are now and what the what the ends are broken down into pieces. So equity is part of the ends, as is being a global person when you graduate from Mount Abraham. So I think part of the work is being done by having these conversations, because once we have an idea of what this group of people believes to be true, we can use that to inform how we ask others what they might believe to be true.
We also have a communications procedure that we created that includes how we share information and how that information is reviewed. So there are a couple of different things in place, but
it seems to me that that's absolutely true. But one of the missing pieces that Erin's report highlights is that the need for a systematic process and systematic structures for collecting the perspectives of people in the community. And some of that's just partly the way board meetings are run. It's partly goes back to the idea in our articles of agreement around school councils as a vehicle for that. We can't rely on a committee of this size to be able to convey to the board the variety of perspectives that exist in our community. So it's partly coming up with the structures that enable that not just structures to give out information, but structures for bringing in information and perspectives. And that's huge. And it's also a huge part of what equity is about.
I have a question, and I'll just show my ignorance. And no, I did not read Aaron's report, and I plan to do so to dig in a little bit deeper here. But has there been attention paid to what other school districts, both here and in other places, have done? And are there places that we could get a little boost in some of this work by looking? I mean, and maybe this has been done, but I can't imagine that there aren't school districts that are ahead of us in terms of the structures and procedures and systems to address this issue. And maybe I'm wrong. What was the school we were talking about, Elisa, that seemed so far ahead of us? I can't remember.
Winooski.
Winooski, right, with its very in your face issues of race and ethnicity and all of that. So I don't know, and I'm just asking, have we picked some brains? We, meaning those who have been engaged in this process, not me, because I haven't been around, but
Yep.
So do you want me to answer, Krista, or do you want to?
Why don't you go ahead and then I can.
I'll fill in. Okay, so when I was writing that, the board actually kicked it back to me a few times for a variety of reasons. And during one of those times, I did some research about other schools and what their ownership plans look like. And very few of them have robust ownership linkage plans. And when they did, it was very simple and didn't outline how they collected data or, where they did that work from. So that left me with more questions as well. And but I did look in the state of Vermont to try to find someone who did it and did it well. And there was no real, I couldn't find anything to even get a template from. So it might be a little bit of invention work on how to do this, but I think we've got some of the pieces in place, like the thought exchange is a great way. We've collected data multiple times from meetings because we've had no issues in the district lately. So we've had no time to figure that stuff out. So we've done a lot of that groundwork to try to get some things in place that would help us do that work.
Liz, did you want to say something?
Yep, can't hear you.
Muted, kiddo.
I appreciate that, Erin. That's the same perception that I have at the moment. And we also, as a board, we did kind of look to see what the capacity was for principals, for school councils at the moment. We've checked in on that a couple times. There also needs to be, there's a lot to it, right? It's not just something that, because the board doesn't go and tell principals you need to have this, right? Like that's not, we don't, that it's kind of like we look at district wide. So if we talked about having a school council, it would be across all schools. And they do have community councils, and Bristol does at least have a school council for kiddos. So it's more complicated than I think, and I know you've listened and been in on a lot of the conversations. It's really complex. And Winooski is really interesting because I thought about that after our last meeting, and they have, because I worked for a teacher who taught up there, and they have all their kids basically in one building. It's like the elementary school and the high school, and then it's just all right there, right on one little campus. And they have a really different set of resources and different set of challenges than us. So I think sometimes even if we can look and say, wow, look what they're doing, we should do that, it just may not be feasible or even possible for us. But I think that I really look forward to finding ways to make this work.
Okay, so I'm going to move us forward because I think we're talking about two different things that are interconnected. One is what is the way we do any of this kind of engagement work, regardless of the topic, and do we have a plan for how we do that? And I think we have parts of a plan, and I think it's hard. And I think it's important to maybe clarify that more. And then the other is the plan really is designed to make sure the board is connecting with the community around the ends. And so right now we're choosing to connect with community around this idea of equity in outcomes for every student. And so, and the goal would be to ensure that the policies and procedures and systems that are in place in the district are that we look at those with an equity lens so that all kids, regardless of their background, have what they need to succeed. And so the community engagement piece comes in because what we really want to hear from people is, what do you think are the most important issues that kids in our community are facing? And almost like taking the word equity out of it, just blank slate. What do you think are the most important issues that kids in our community are facing? Now, the key here is talking to folks from lots of different backgrounds, because everybody has a different perspective. And what's our school system currently doing to support kids? And how would you think our school system should change to make sure that kids have what they need to be successful? And I think once we have this opportunity to connect with people about this, which I think is sort of a unifying topic, actually, which we could use some of, I think, in our district. Then the idea would be we'd share those themes with our school leaders, because they're the ones who are going to then break them down into specific actions, but also with the board to say, okay, how do we ensure from a policy level, when we think about how we're evaluating our superintendent, or how we're looking at how we protect our assets, or how we're looking at how curriculum is chosen, from a policy level, how do we align our policies and our planning so that they have that equity analysis in place? So thinking about engaging with the community around that topic. At the last meeting, I shared that the Vermont School Board Association had the opportunity to maybe get some help from an outside consultant, and that was the Insight Education Group. They were offering some funding to do that. And so Patrick, Don, and I had an initial conversation with somebody from that group, and they shared a proposal with us, which I linked in the agenda. I also had the chance to talk with Sue McCormick, who again has worked with our district for a while. And actually, since that time, I've had the chance to do a lot of work with her in other districts around equity and inclusion. And so I also had the sort of bounce some ideas off of her. I think Patrick, Don, and I all sort of felt that well, first of all, the Insight Education Group, unfortunately, because of the timing, we would actually have to pay for their services. And the proposal really is primarily focused around community engagement, and it's not cheap. And when we thought about it, and this is someone from Connecticut, so not local to our community. So when I thought about it more, I thought, we have a lot of these tools, this past experience and this knowledge to connect with our community on our own around some of these questions. I don't know that we really need to bring somebody in to do that. And so I wanted to just share what I think could work. And I've shared this plan with Sue to get her feedback. And when we worked with Sue in the past, she talked about how it could be really helpful to have kind of a kickoff event or something that brings people together around an idea and motivates them and gets them excited to engage. And I might have mentioned to this group that I had heard that folks in Vergennes in their district were thinking about doing a screening of the Listen Up musical. I don't know if I did mention that or not, and even if I did, if people know what that is. But Bess O'Brien, who's a documentary filmmaker and theater director up in the Northeast Kingdom, did a project around 2018 where she, through the Young Writers Project, asked young people in Vermont, what's going on? What issues are you facing? What are you thinking about? What are you dealing with? They collected 600 to 700 different anecdotes, stories, insight from young people. And then Bess and her team took that and with a group of teenagers turned it into a musical that they then they had to workshop it during COVID, which was unanticipated, but then they did do live performances, free live performances around the state in 2021. And what's really powerful about this musical is it's the voices of young people telling us, the people in their community, what they're grappling with. And it really encompasses the range of experiences of people in our community, from kids living in foster care to kids who have family members struggling with addiction, to transgender youth, to people with disabilities, all the things. And it really does a nice job of kind of putting out there for folks, hey, listen to us, this is what we're dealing with. And then it also shares and sort of builds to a particular piece around the experiences of Black and Brown youth in Vermont. And it really highlights that those challenges have another layer of complexity and intensity in addition to the others that are part of the musical. And so they do these screenings, and you know, I was telling Sue, oh, maybe we could do some listening sessions in the community and get feedback from people around, you know, what do you think kids are grappling with, and what do you think our schools are doing well to support them, and what do you think they need more support in, and we could gather feedback and data. And then I was saying, and then we could do this kickoff event. And she was like, what if you did the screening first? It is so powerful. It's a way to get people together. We could maybe use some of the money that we wouldn't pay an outside consultant to get Bess to come, and maybe a couple of the students who acted in it. But what if we screened it and then did a Q&A or discussion, and then maybe gave people like an exit survey or a quick poll or something to help capture, you know, after you see this film and you listen to these students, what do you think we're addressing right now? What do you think we're doing now to address these issues? What should be doing? What should we be doing to better support all kids? And I feel like that could be a really energizing, unifying way to kind of shed light on some of these issues, and then also get our community's reaction to that. And then with that feedback, figure out, okay, we've got all this, we had these conversations with people. What do we want to do next with this? Do we want to try to convene a group based on interest from that screening, you know, of people who want to talk more about how to maybe we want to have additional conversations. Maybe we want to identify things that could be on the ground work that community members would be interested in. Maybe we want to create a district level equity analysis tool. I think there's a lot of things that could spin off of that. But I think it could be a place to start the conversation that maybe gets us out of spinning our wheels a little bit, and lets the sort of story be told by the young people who I think really want us to listen. So I'll stop there, and I guess I'll just see what reactions you have to that idea. And also, has anybody seen it?
I haven't seen it. I've read about it, and I know Bess she did some work with teen parents. She did another project, the Voices Project, several years ago. I think it's a great idea. And I think having an event is a great idea. The first thing that comes to my mind is how can we get people there who ordinarily wouldn't go to such a thing? And I feel particularly passionate about that. I mean, to be really explicit, there are people right now who are writing on Front Porch Forum in a very naysaying kind of a way. And I want to get those people to sit down and talk about their perspectives. And, I can imagine being extremely engaged and extremely moved by Bess O'Brien's musical. And I just want to make sure that there are people who ordinarily wouldn't see it. I have a couple of, personal connections that might help with that. I don't know if that would be something that we could do. Lay the groundwork for it being a true reflection. I mean, to have people there that are a real representation of our community, rather than all of us who already would go. I guess that's one of my reactions. I think that there needs to be some groundwork about that. I think it's a great idea, Krista.
Yeah, and I think that to get some of those people at the table, it needs to feel more like there is the ability to have an open dialogue. And I don't agree with everybody that's on Front Porch Forum. Some people go farther than me, but I do know that there is a sense that there's kind of a one-way channel to be able to communicate to the board. There's rarely very much that comes back. And there's somewhat of a sense of like, you can only say certain things within board meetings before you get shut down. So I think that really needs to be addressed before people would even want to show up.
Do you have ideas about how to do that?
Maybe. Nothing that I have like prepared to speak about right now. I think that there's been a really severe erosion of trust between the administration and the board and the community. And I think rebuilding that trust is going to be a part of it. I also think that there's a lack of humility and vulnerability that comes especially from the administration that would go a long ways and to help rebuild that. Everything always feels very contentious, and everything always feels like it's set up to be more of a conflict than a discussion. But it's also true that like almost every school board meeting has, close to zero community participants. And then when something happens that people don't like, a lot of people show up. And I don't know, I know as a parent and a busy person myself, like sometimes you run out of ability to keep going, and it's exhausting to go to all of these meetings. They're all really long. They're at like the worst possible time if you have little kids. So I think there's a lot of things that are already barriers to getting people there. And then when they feel like, well, I don't really have a voice anyway, then they don't necessarily want to go and spend that time.
Go ahead, just jump in, Alyssa. Elisa?
Hi. Whoops. I have to admit, I'm sitting here squirming in my seat with discomfort. And I want to try to articulate it in a meaningful way. And there's a lot of emotion underneath it, so please forgive me. I want to agree with the gentleman that just spoke, Christopher. In our district, there is the board and there are the people in the community, and there is no connection. The board, God bless you for what you've gone through in the last months or years, but at the same time, there is a very dysfunctional relationship between the school board and our community. And I don't think the more board involvement there is in this conversation, the harder the conversation is going to be. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking for the last half an hour or more, we've been talking about bringing a structure to communication. And I don't know if I'm the only one that sees that structure and communication do not go well hand in hand. There's no way we're going to get data that's truthful from the community that we live in and or helpful. It's just going to be data that's meaningless. And I don't understand how this plan will possibly address the students of color that don't feel safe at our school right now, today, and will graduate in June. Some of them, I don't know how many there are right now, but those that have graduated are just going to be glad to get the hell out of there. And those that are still there are still going to be afraid when they come back to school next fall, because we'll still be talking about a structure of communication. I cannot stress how important it is to me that we just talk to people openly, transparently, and from the heart, instead of trying to structure it into a, what are we going to share with the public? What are we not going to share with the public? How do we say it? And who do we get to tell us how to say it? It's like, we're human beings with hearts. We should just be able to talk about this as a community. And if the board isn't willing to do that kind of communication, then we need another organization that does. The board has taken no action since I saw weeping children of color on the screen on my Zoom. This time last year, the board has said nothing to address those safety issues for our students of color who are there right now, that are going to get up tomorrow morning and dread going to school. And I think we're doing this topic of equity a great disservice by not recognizing that we are in an emergency situation in our high school. And we need to deal with this emergency at the same time all this other stuff is happening. We cannot let it sit for another day, another week, another month, another graduation, another summer vacation, and we're back here next fall and we still haven't done anything. And I'm sorry, but this is just flooring me that we can't have a conversation without a board structure. It absolutely knocks me backwards. I'm sorry, but I truly feel this way. And I don't feel like the conversation tonight is going in any direction that will address those needs tomorrow morning or next Monday or 1 month from now. And it's not at all what I hoped it would be. And I'm struggling with my disappointment, and I'm struggling with the fact that the school board works for me, works for the community, and does no communication at all. And I'm just tired of it. I'm just tired, and I want to see something different happen.
You can speak if you have your hand up.
Thanks, Elisa, for speaking your truth and sharing that with all of us. And I wanted to tag on to what Christopher was saying. And I came to this meeting today thinking that one of the problems is the structure of people saying things that don't ever get responded to. And it's how a lot of misinformation gets permeated into the community. And unless you are sitting in on all the meetings and listening to all the conversation, as opposed to just coming and saying your piece and leaving, you don't know, because there is no follow-up from the public comment or people's concerns. And the community we need to change how we either structure our board meetings, or we need to have other meetings where people can come and have a conversation where it's not a crisis. And I think that we've been in this sort of crisis mode for the last 3 years. And I really got involved on this committee because I wanted to figure out how to bring the community together in a way where we could solve a lot of the problems that we're addressing. We've got a lot of really caring people that want to help, that want to participate, but we haven't provided the opportunity for that. And I love Krista's idea about bringing somebody, but I do think that inherently we have to figure out how to address the people who are saying things that aren't true, the people that are in this reactive sort of attack mode every time somebody says something. It's just the dynamic that's gotten created over the last 3 years has become one of mistrust. And it's hard to know what the right answer is and who's telling the truth, because there's just so much information flowing in one direction. And so I want to add that to what Christopher and Elisa are saying, and perhaps this conversation that we're having tonight has to be as urgent or more urgent as the situation actually is, and that action. We need to figure out a way where we can move into action more quickly and not talk about things until they're forgotten or people get tired or they're too busy and can't participate. So, so thanks.
I don't know who had their hand up first, Inika or Deb. So Inika, do you want to go ahead and then Deb?
Yes, I will go. Thank you, Elisa and Christopher. When you are talking about truth and telling the people exactly why they are bringing the people to the community, to the meeting, instead of, hiding things. I just realized when this meeting started, I was invited to talk about issues in Monabe around equity. And I saw that there was a bunch of folks interested in it, but now I feel that there is a formality and there is a board. I have no idea what is the name of this group, what is the name of this board. It is already an organization that has a structure and everything, and I feeling like I agree with many of the things that you have said. So some of you that I feel like there is a sense of manipulation of bringing to these meetings, get some information and then go to the board and then you make the decisions and then who knows what. And that's the feeling that I am having right now, because when I came to the meeting, I came to a totally different idea of what I was going to find because the information wasn't clear. So I think that it is very important, and I support everybody saying transparency is number one to truth. And I think that I have not been very engaged in all the things that happened in this district, but I know some of that because but I see the experience from another perspective, which is my child's comments every day, which, by the way, feels like not inclusion, no diversity, the curriculums, whatever I said before. You are asking what should we do or what needs to be done, because since that whatever we say, someone is going to do it, which I feel that it is totally again that if I am having studied white supremacy for many years since I arrived here. This is one of the threats of white supremacy is centering the white, continuity with the order, like the way that we are doing, that has to be a board, and then we have to be a committee, and then we have to do that. And that is my idea. That when I was listening to all of you, I think that the idea of the screening is nice. I think that the beginning was nice, but we are using it to get more information. I think that we have already the information. What puzzles me is I work in Champlain Valley District. They hire one DI director full-time, plus 4 full-time positions for each school. I am one of those full-time positions, and I am the DI coach in Hinesburg Community School and Charlotte Community School. I feel like when people say, oh, we don't have money, they are charging, you need, every school, every organization need DEI professionals. It's not a bunch of volunteers that maybe we want to have someone and no, it needs if you want to break structures, you need a structure plan. And to get a structure plan, you need people focus on that. And I feel like having a volunteer or have a conversation with someone of the board and then the board informs, this is continuity with that. If you want to make someone fit, you hire a physical coach. If you need mental health, you hire a professional. I know that the district is in a mess right now, but if really there is a commitment with equity, they should get a budget and hire a professional person, because I go to DI meetings with DI leaders in all Vermont. We have a meeting every month, and every person, like in Burlington, there is one person that has 5 schools, and you are starting to explore, you see.
I think you might have cut out, Einiko. Deborah, why don't you go ahead? And maybe we can come back to you if you come back in, Einiko. You're muted though.
There we go. Well, I don't know if I can get my thoughts together. So much has transpired here. I do agree with Elisa and Christopher. And as a former teacher, these committees mean a lot to the people who are on the committees, because they buy into them and they're empowered by them. The trouble with that is the trickle down doesn't happen, or if it happens way in the future. So I do see like 2 things happening. I'm not against collecting data. I'm not against talking to the community, but I'm really passionate about the students in tomorrow. I was on the same committee with Elisa with Mount Abe High School students in tears because they didn't feel safe. And I don't know what's been done, if anything's been done. Maybe something's been done, but I don't know. But I get tears in my eyes just remembering that meeting. So to me, there isn't one thing that needs to happen. And I know that's spreading people thin, but the long term and the short term need to happen simultaneously. I loved your idea, Krista. And for me, I thought, wow, that would really be a great empowering thing for the high school students themselves to hear that play and what other kids are thinking and going through, and maybe they could identify it. It would be nice for the community too, but you don't want to sing to the choir either. And I don't know how to get the people who are disenfranchised to come. I wish I had answers for that. But I think I'm sure you are aware the crisis is real, and it's got to be more done concretely now, alongside of all the data and all the work that you are trying to do. And I thank you for your work. It's time consuming and thankless most of the time. So I don't want what I'm saying to feel like I'm dismissing what you have done. I applaud what you do and the work that you put in. It's not easy. But I feel like our kids are in crisis. Okay, thank you.
Nancy. You're muted.
I really also like your idea, Krista, and I think there are other people in this meeting tonight who have additional ideas. We're talking about complex problems, complex issues here, and no one thing is going to be enough to solve the issues we're talking about. But I love the idea of doing what you suggested and doing it with kids as the audience, with students as the audience. And maybe we do it twice, or maybe, you know, I wonder if there are other ideas in the virtual room here tonight that we might want to just hear. I think Elisa has some ideas, and I think maybe Christopher has some ideas about other things we might do, or and also ways to do them. I mean, one of the things I'm hearing, one of the things I think I heard is that that some of the things will have to not be so explicitly connected to the board, because of there's some distrust and concern about the board, but people need to have a conversation perhaps without that structure as part of it. So maybe we should hear other ideas that people have and begin to percolate around an array of strategies to jump onto.
I just wanted to make sure that we also came back to Annika if she's back, because I think she may be, because I saw her go to mute, and I just want to make sure she feels it gets to be heard.
Can you hear us, Annika?
Yes, and thank you, Jennifer. Okay, I think structurally, and that's why I feel for the problem of trust, put that decision on the board is hard. When you were talking, the previous person that was talking about the students, I believe the students already talk. This is data. We know there is a lot of comments from Porch Forum. This is data. You already have a data. I think that we have data, but what is the action steps like? One of the things I feel like, what are the students leaders in the school? I know that there are some. Why they are not in this conversation? Those are the students that they are going to tell us, this is going to do, we are going to do this, we want that. We are talking about the students, but there are no the students in this room. I don't know if there are students in the board meetings, like there is a student representative of the board, for the board, but data, we already have the data. I feel personal, I am a sociologist, and one of the things I learned from statistics is people get tired of being asked constantly about, what do you think about this? What do you think? But then they don't see results. And again, the problem of trust come to the table. So I believe there is data already, but I don't think that the same people, like data can be manipulated. I believe that it should be put in the hands of the community. Like, why don't we, or you invite a diverse committee that has to be representation, LGBTQ people, people with disabilities, people of color, people, different backgrounds, as you were saying. That committee will have more trust than the board. I don't say anything at the board, but as I said, I'm not very involved. And students. Students need to be on the table. And if you have collected data, and I think that the principal was here in this meeting, this principal needs to go and send the voice to everybody in every single school. We need the students. I bet that there are groups of students. There are the GSA and there are other groups. Those students needs to be in this table and needs to be in this meeting, or create a new committee where the voice of the students is represented. Not one student, is different groups, different backgrounds. We're talking about the students without involving the students. So I think that the first thing that will be that. And I come back to the idea, Every institution needs a professional, a DEI person devoted to that. Because look everywhere, colleges, everywhere they are hiring people. Some check the box, but some really committed to that. And I think that if this board is, or the school board is committed to the transformation, a long-term transformation, need to create a person that people are going to trust, that they are going to organize those meetings and everything. You are talking about tomorrow, the students that come back to the school. Okay. The board is going to talk to the principal or suggest to the principal and or the superintendent and said, you are going to create, you are going to invite the students. And then we are going to ask the students what we can do. But that also, are the students going to trust which adults are going to lead this? So this is also, you are going to invite the community. And then look, what I have learned also is, if you are going to invite people of color, most of the people of color, some people are immigrants like me. Let's not talk about me. People of color need, look, I am a person of color, but I live in white privilege. I'm very clear about that. So things that sometimes I tell, I beyond that, because I have support in my community. But some people don't. Pay them childcare so that people can come. Some people work 3 or 4 jobs cleaning most of the time because our accent is not enough to access to good jobs. So, okay, so then have them to pay them for the time that they are going to be there. But it is really, if you really want to transform, you have to involve the community and invite them and bring the students and bring the people from different backgrounds. Thank you.
I just want to add 2 things to what I said before. One is that I do think, I love your idea, Krista, about the movie, but I don't feel like it's part of this plan. I think it's a great thing to do for the community and for the students. And I would personally love to see it, but I don't see it. It feels like almost like a distraction to me in some ways, as far as solving the problems that we'd like to try to solve. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is that I just don't believe it. All we have to do is listen to each other here tonight, or talk to people on the street, or look at the world around us. We don't need any data to tell us that we have big issues to work on. We don't need to collect any data. Maybe we need to collect some ideas about what to do, about what's going on, but the data is so right in our face every moment, every day, that I just don't feel like it's worth the structure of collecting data in order to identify a problem that we know that we all have.
So I have a lot of different thoughts in my own head, and I'm going to share a little bit of what I'm feeling, which is also very uncomfortable. So first off, when folks speak about the board, that's me, that's Liz, that's Erin. And I get very uncomfortable when folks say the board, because what you're talking about is a group of volunteers that is trying to do the right thing as best we can. And I joined this committee because I thought we really needed to make sure that we had community voice. And I advocated for community members to be on this committee of the board. And a lot of the things that folks are talking about, when we did our first engagement in 2018, 2019, we had students involved. We had conversations in the community with 135 people, one-on-one conversations. Nancy participated in those. I think Kim participated in those. When folks say data, I think there's a misunderstanding about what that means. I think it's conversations with people to hear about their experience, to learn from it, and to make people feel heard, involved, listened to build trust, to build relationship. I think that's what I see this work as being about, and that out of those conversations, it also gives me as a board member some power to try to leverage change at the district level. And so to be able to connect with people that I might not normally connect with, to go talk to my neighbor, to go talk to someone in the coffee shop that I don't know, to just try to identify people that are not in my regular orbit of white, upper middle class, nice ladies. It takes a lot of work. It takes the commitment of a lot of people. And those are really important conversations that are not really well defined by data. It's about building relationships, making connections, and also listening for themes, because it is about relationship building, but it's also about, again, finding themes that you can then go back to try to move the needle to make decisions in a system that's very hard to move the needle in. It is incredibly frustrating for many people to see how slow that process is, and it feels like it's not engaging, and it feels like people aren't listening. And by looking at just board meetings and public comments, they're the worst possible ways to engage people. What we should be doing is, we have a board meeting, we have a community engagement opportunity, we have a board meeting, we have a community. We should be regularly having opportunities to talk to our community, but it's a lot of work. You know, it's just the same few people showing up to do that. So it's hard. And I'm feeling like I'm not sure what my role is here because again, I started on the board as a parent of a kid who is regularly excluded all the time in every way, and in our community. Who's in our community working on downtown accessibility? She can't get into half the stores downtown. I found the place where I can make a difference, and it's a system, and it's a pain in the ass, and it takes forever. But I really, really get upset when folks just say the board, and that this is not genuine, and that this is, it's very easy to criticize one another. It's very hard to say, you know what, let's do this work together. I'm feeling like maybe I'm not the person to lead this work, which is okay. But this is what happens to folks when you make a commitment to try to make a change. You get burnt out. I think I might be burnt out. It doesn't have to be the way I suggested. It could be lots of different ways. I also want to say that, Nancy, you brought up the whole question about community linkage. It derailed the conversation. I understand why you brought it up. For folks that maybe didn't quite get the connection, I think what Nancy's trying to do is help ensure that we have a sustainable process in place as a board to make sure we do this stuff regularly and not when there's a crisis. But I think what people heard was more process, more talking, more committees, no action. And that's not what I think Nancy meant, but that's what I think people heard. And again, it makes it look like we've got our asses, we got our head in our ass. So I'm just being just as truthful as other people. I don't normally do this in a board meeting. I probably shouldn't be. But I think it's really important that we give each other grace, because there's no way we can do this work without it. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm not quite sure where to go right now. If anybody else wants to help figure out where to go from here, I would appreciate it.
I actually would just like to say thank you for actually showing a human side and being vulnerable and being a person. I think you actually, Liz and Krista, Aaron, I don't know you as well. We haven't got to speak, so I'm sorry for that. But Liz and Krista, you do a really good job of reaching out, being available, always being willing to talk to people. I think that there is a difference between the individuals on the board and the board itself. The board as an entity is a cold, uninviting, just difficult thing to have to try to interface with. The people that make it up, that's not the case for them. I think if the board could show more humanity like you did, I think that would be a good step in the right direction.
I just want to say that if anything that I said made you feel like that, I apologize, because I do respect you and every single person of the board, because you're volunteer parents, and this is a lot. I just, before you start talking, I want to say that if you hear me as I was fighting, I am not. My mommy was telling me, are you fighting? I'm like, no, I just get passionate about this. And with my strong accent, sometimes it feels like it is, people perceive it in a different way, also because of my accent. And Krista, I do share with you, I have cried a lot. I think that I am done with crying because I have been excluded from the community in so many different ways. But as I always say, and I'm a survivor from my country, I am a survivor. So I think that right now everything slips out of me, but I am involved and I'm passionate about that because I am part of this, what people call diversity, which we can have a little different talk. I express, like everybody say, oh, I like this idea, I like this idea, but I feel, I don't want to say, I don't know if my idea had been heard, because I know that you said that you have 130 plus people in a meeting like 3 years ago. But again, I brought an idea to the table, and is we have to bring the students, because if we bring the students that are going home and say, oh, I was in a meeting today, we are bringing the community too. If the adults, the students are the ones that live that. This is the first time or second time that I have been in one of those meetings here, but I am not a newbie, you know. Again, I brought that idea, and you are asking again, what should we do? I would like you to consider is bringing the students to create a committee, inviting them to that idea, even telling them, hey, what do you think about this movie? Is that any possible way to involve the students in this conversation?
And I think that part of what Krista is saying, and I think part of what we've all felt, is that we need a lot more hands on deck to do this work. That this is the community's responsibility. And, you know, it's easy to, as Krista said, to say the board, and the structure of communicating with the board is difficult. And it's the way our governance is. It's public comment where the board can't respond to people's comments. So that's a structure that doesn't work, but perhaps collectively, people that have this kind of passion and interest can come together and do community engagement. And Krista, you said it when you were speaking, that there's the board meeting, and then maybe there's community engagement, where some of the things and the concerns that people have presented to the board can get responded to by the community engagement folks, by people like all of us. And if the issues that are urgent include the equity and respect and safety, that those are the things that we as a committee and as a group of people, this is the most people I think I've ever seen at one of these meetings, that we can all share the burden, we can all do the work. So Krista, you know how much I just appreciate all the work that you've done, not just as a member of the school board, but leading this committee and navigating a lot of really difficult years. And it takes more people. We need more hands. And so people can't show up with ideas and then say, this is what I think you should do. This is what we need to do. And this is what we all need to come together. So I think having working committees that where people take a share of this work and say, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do, and then we collectively come together and we make it happen, because it's just too few people carrying this very, very heavy load.
I just wanted to say, I appreciate the emotion coming in, and thank you. I think, Krista, it's good to break down in this work and what we're talking about. If we don't break down and show our emotion, then that's the disservice. And so that's what I said originally, that I hope the conversation could be, and I appreciate that. And then the second thing is, I think we have a possible a suggestion, a possible beginning solution of the students from Annika that I want to uplift and make sure that we're hearing, and that we, I guess my question is, what is the process? How can we ask students to come to this next time? Or how, how do we do that? How do we get involvement from the student leaders, maybe as a place to start, that are already organized? And how do we do that?
One of the things I'm wondering about, maybe everyone else knows this, but I really don't. And that is, I'm really curious about what the school is doing, what the teachers and counselors and others in the school are doing in relation to equity issues that people have been talking about here tonight. I just don't know, but I mean, I know that I can't imagine that they are not worried about these issues, thinking about these issues, making plans and trying different things around these issues. And maybe you all know what they're doing, and it's clear to you, but it's not clear to me. And so that's one thing that I wish for as a community member.
It's occurred to me several times during this conversation that if each of us can maybe self-define a task, it would feel good. And one thing, I'm a social worker, I'm retired, but I work a lot with people who are social workers and counselors at Mount Abe right now, 7 through 12. I would very much like to meet with them. And exactly what you were saying, Nancy. I mean, to me, it's like, well, what's happening, and where can we communicate that and buoy it and make it front and center and educate ourselves and others. So one thing that I would like to do is to get in touch with the counselors and social workers at Mount Abe and try to see if I can organize a meeting. And if somebody wants to do that with me, even better, because I certainly have my biases as a social worker, and report back. I don't know. I mean, I feel like what I'm worried about is that it's 8 o'clock and we're going to all just feel really emotional, and that's not a bad thing, but I'd love to have some concrete, that's a concrete task that I would be willing to do, and then report back and even write something up. I don't know. Is that kosher? Is that allowed? Can I just do that as a community member?
Yep. That would be great. I mean, as long as it's not a board coordinated thing. You can.
I'm not part of the board.
That would be awesome if you did that.
There are some really good people at Mount Abe doing this work. I don't know any students. Well, I know a couple students. I taught them knitting.
I know at least 2 that live in my house.
At Mount Abe, but I do know some of the social workers and counselors, and I feel like it's a missing piece about what they are on the ground every day, working with the kids who are probably the most troubled in zillions of ways. So I would be willing to do that. I don't know if anybody wants to join me. I'm happy to do it myself. Great. That's one thing that I will commit to do out of this meeting.
Thank you.
And it means probably, I mean, it used to be in all the meetings that I've ever been to in my life that the best thing we could possibly do is not schedule another meeting, but it sounds like we need to schedule another meeting.
So this
report
group,
back. And
yeah,
are there
well,
other
this group meets the first Tuesday of the month, and so you have a month to maybe have that conversation and
I will do my
come
very
back and
best.
share. And I think I'd be really open to hearing that.
Great.
Uh,
And maybe one of them can come, and be much more articulate than I could, but I know everybody's super busy. I'm retired, for God's sake. So, so I'll do that.
Liz,
If
and
you want
then
help, Anne,
Deb.
call me up, okay?
Okay.
Liz, and then Deborah.
I appreciate that, Anne, and I appreciate your social work background in that, because there's been a really big challenge about speaking generally and not so specifically, that we're pointing out certain students that it would be identifiable that we were talking about them. So that's great. And my action step will be to a member of the community council at Mount Abe. So that's a great group of students, and they are working on assigning their 2 representatives to the board. I think one attends and one's kind of like the backup, and they will be doing student reports to the board. And certainly, perhaps I would love to extend an invitation to a specific event. They just really like to know what we'll be talking about when, and the vague invitations haven't been highly successful with them. So if we can be specific, that would be great. And thank you, everybody. I slowed down on the note taking near the second half,
It's
and I
fine.
just, it was really, felt really good to hear people speak. So just thank you, everyone.
Deb,
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to say too. Thank you. This is a process surrounding a very difficult, very complex issues. I think everything that everyone brought up is really important. And I think actually the fact that many of us got so emotional means we were really hitting some key issues. So I think it's really a positive thing. And I'll help you out if I can, if I'm here. And I like Annika's idea of getting the students involved, but I would like to tag along with that to remind us that it's not the students' problem. We adults created this problem. So I feel like we have to be the leaders in helping them create solutions for it. Not that we don't have to listen to them. I just don't want to. I want them to feel supported. I guess that's all I want to say. But I want to thank everybody and all the work. It's not easy and it's very time consuming. So thank you very much.
Kim, and then Ainika.
So one of the things that I've been working on is with the migrant community here in New Haven. And we had a student from Mount Abe come to talk to the kids at Beeman, and her mom and she are coming to work with Kathy Alexander and the lunch staff to make a meal. And the kids are learning about her country, and the teachers are on board, the principal's on board, the librarian's been doing a lot of work. And I reached out to Bristol Elementary School, and Kathy said she'd love to duplicate this in all the elementary schools, and it would be great for the high school as well. So I'm going to continue to do that. And that's something near and dear to my heart, and something that I feel is part of this work. So I'll report back when we meet next time.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for the meeting. But before everybody goes, I have to say that I disagree that this is the students' problem, because they are the ones who are suffering right now. I agree, this mess was made by the adults, but saying that we cannot involve, if we don't involve the students since the beginning, we cannot come and say, hey, this is what we, the adults, decided to make for you. No, I work with the students. I lead students meetings, LGBTQ groups, racial groups. I see them, their level of understanding. They teach me with their experience. I tell you, if you don't, my step will be who is going to take care of telling the students. My suggestions is a petition to the board, which I don't know, whoever is the board, to tell the leaders of the schools to invite those students to meetings and to tell them that is going on and what do you think that is next action steps. Just shower of ideas. What do you think? What is the action steps we have to do now? You already said we already have the data, but I feel like putting the students aside, this is the problem, that adults make the mess and they are not ready to solve the problem. The students are beyond that. Look, talk to other students about what the LGBTQ letters means and everybody, all the identities about sexuality and gender identity and everything. They give you, my kids always tell me, they teach me every day. They really, so telling that the students, this is not, no, I'm going to reiterate that we have to bring the students. And thank you for one person that called my idea back, because again, when a person of color calls to these meetings, a white person needs to certify the idea and the voice, so the person of color is being heard. I have been saying many times, if you don't bring the students, and I'm sorry if I am not upset, I am just passionate with a strong accent, the students are essential to be part of those. They are brilliant. They are living it. They have ideas. They are creative. They are connected. They know it, really. And they are the majority of students want to change, and only a few students are perpetuating the mess that we created or the other people created, because I really came to this country 20 years ago. But please listen. Someone needs to say, my action step is reaching those students. I don't know who has the directory of those students. I heard that Liz is connected with some students. Connect to those students leaders, please. I feel that this is the action step that needs to be done. Thank you.
Just on that, there were actually one of my daughters was involved in this group last year, and it lost steam. They got frustrated. They felt like they didn't know where to go next. But anyway, that group, I know a couple of those students that were involved in the Mount Abe activism group and really involved in the anti-racism conversation. So I'd be happy to invite them to come to our next meeting.
Thank you, Krista, and thank you, Liz. It sounds like you also have that connection to bring students here. So that's what I was looking to hear too. Just how do we get to them? So that's wonderful to hear.
Annika, I don't know if your hand is up from before. Did you have anything else to add?
Hi, my dear. Well, I wasn't, but before I allow my hand, I wonder if we could have, or there should create like a shared document, because if the students are going to come, we cannot invite them to tell us what they feel. It's like, what do you think we should do to diversify the curriculum? What do you think that they, like questions that they bring, and like they can come with concrete ideas, because it's not for them to come and explain how do they feel and the problems they experience. Is really come with okay, we believe that this is what we could do. And they are brilliant, they are amazing, really. So yeah.
If you have specific questions that you think would be good to pose to students, Annika, then you can share them with me. That would be great.
I will keep in touch with you, and
Okay.
yeah, and please share the agenda with me. Thank you.
Okay. It's 8:10. I want to be respectful of time, but I also want to be respectful of the conversation. So
So the next meeting is February 7th.
Correct.
I'll be in Arizona, but I can be there by Zoom.
Yeah, I really like in-person meetings, but the convenience of Zoom is kind of hard to give up. There's a level of inclusion that it offers. It also makes it hard to have conversations sometimes. So one of the things I'm working on that is kind of part of how I recognize my own white supremacy is being okay with non-closure and not having a very specific plan or a specific agenda. So I feel like we talked about a lot of things. I appreciate folks for letting me let down a little bit. And I think we have some ideas to talk about when we get together again. So to me, this feels like an okay time to end. When I see some nodding heads, but if others have anything else they want to say before we close, please let me know.
I'd just like to say I'd be glad to jump in on that with you and also that special project.
Great. Do we all have each other's emails, right? So we can figure that out. Okay. I'm going to email my colleagues and buddies and see what we can come up with in terms of a time to get together. So I'll let you know.
In relation to that, the colleagues may feel more comfortable with a smaller group of outsiders than a larger group. So you've gotten some volunteers to help you tonight, but don't feel you need to call on us.
Right.
But
I will most definitely, and I will most definitely keep everyone in the loop about how that contact goes and what we decide. Yeah.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
The Aaron, not Aaron Jipner, but the other Aaron. What's your last name, Aaron?
Ruble, R-U-B-L-E.
Okay, thanks.
You know what I can do too, because I don't know if you were on my original distribution list, Anne, but I can just email everybody back and make sure you're in it.
That would be great.
Everybody's emails are visible.
That would be
great. You can all reach out to each other.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kim.
I just want to say that, after the 3 bond votes, however many years ago that was, there was a good group of people that got together, talked about ways that we could support the board and that we could support the schools. And it was exactly this kind of thing where a group of community members got together and did some of this work. And so I'm just, it just dawned on me that we talked about this 5 years ago and had hoped that we could just have community people come together in areas of interest and things that they're excited about and ways to make a difference in the community schools. And there was a group that did the HVAC system at Mount Abe, and that was one of the community groups that came and figured it out and included the students, and they did some science projects and scientific collections. And so this for me is very heartening, because it's the kind of model and it's the kind of thing that committee after committee it's not really the answer, but groups of interested, passionate community members getting involved is really how we can make a difference. So thank you to everybody for being here and staying involved.
And I think the challenge for the board is to figure out how to be open to that and how to find ways to encourage and involve that while also, staying in our lane, I guess. We're trying.
I would add that the interesting thing, because I participated in the HVAC group, the superintendent and the facilities district-wide person attended those meetings. So because this does start to fall into not necessarily board work, that there are other avenues. There are superintendent principals, there are ways to get involved in the system directly, not necessarily even through the board. So that just to keep that in mind as we move forward. And I'm excited too, Kim. So thank you.
Okay, everyone. Signing off at 8:15. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Buddy, good night.